AdLib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. AdLib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The AdLib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using AdLib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa, and I'm joined by Eric Franchi. How's it going, Eric?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Today we are going to talk about AI. 3 different things. 1, how we're actually using it every day. 2, big news, which is Jack Dorsey's company Block laying off 4,000 of 10,000 employees and specifically citing AI and a new way of working as the reason. And then the third is sort of common reactions to AI and sort of how it seems to be bandied about in the public discourse and what we think those sort of representations get right or wrong. So first, down to earth, how are you actually using AI on a day in, day out basis?
How long have we been talking about our own personal use of these tools?
Probably like a little over a year, like 15 months.
Yeah. So, because when you first suggested this as a topic, I thought it was great. But then I realized, it's truly become a co-pilot. So I was like, my answer would be very brief, like everything. But obviously, I'm not going to just get to that and end the pod, right? So I put together a few themes of how I use AI in my job every day. I will asterisk this with, there's probably not too many people that have my job that listen to this pod. Our pod is typically ad tech founders, execs, go-to-market folks, and everything else. So you will probably find some things in here that apply to you, but just a bit of an asterisk, if that makes sense. I'll also say that, Aperium, where I work, we're somewhat unique in that we're a small team. We don't have it's not unlike maybe a large venture or PE firm where we have like an army of analysts and junior partners and everything like that. Like we do the work ourselves. So some of what I'm going to talk about may be applicable from the standpoint of, hey, if you're on a small team or if you are the team, this might benefit from you. So for me, we'll do me first. Here's the 3 themes. So number 1, and I kind of wrote this stuff down, investment and fund judgment. So I have a team of basically AI agent analysts that I work with all day long, because I'm looking at deals all day long. So again, if I'm looking at a deal, it's very specific to Eric, but maybe you can extrapolate this with your work. I've got a few things that I do like literally all the time. So you use a LLM, and I'll use ChatGPT and Claude for different things. I will stress test a thesis and generate counter arguments to myself. I'll do a lot of the math work. So I'll model valuations, dilution, exit scenarios. I'll analyze a landscape across multiple companies and try to develop some themes and see if I can pressure test my own thinking about a category that's emerging or mature. I'll run a lot of other scenarios in terms of like the effect a given investment, whether it's an existing investment or a new investment, might have on our fund returns. Because again, like the objective of my job is to return capital to our investors. So I think about that stuff all day long. And then I'll use it to quickly kind of summarize decks and long documents instantly. Use that as a bit of a filter. So the thing here is, this is analyst work typically. So I'm going from assigning a job, waiting for that job to get done, coming back, reviewing it, maybe giving some feed time and needing another turn, into just getting the job done by myself in minutes. So it speeds the time. And also it's got the benefit of speeding the time to make a decision, whether that's a decision that is a person internally is relying on, or a decision a person externally, i.e. a founder, is relying on.
What would you do before the AI era to do these kinds of tasks, and how does it change it that you can use AI?
So again, we didn't have a team of analysts and then kind of cut them and said, we're going all in on AI. This is stuff that I would have to do myself, or we'd have to do across the team. So it would just be like taking what now takes minutes and taking hours, if not days. So it is shortened the cycle of getting stuff done and allowing me to get, I can't even give you the percentage increase of the amount of work I can get done as it relates to this type of thing.
So I imagine it might have a material impact on how you have built and will build the fund, right? And that you would need more of that like sort of army of lower level people that you might not need.
Yeah, for sure. I think, at some point this taps out and there's like other activities that agents can't necessarily do. But for this specific thing, that's like a real part of the job, I'm finding that I can get it done myself just with an army of agents.
Miles Younger from U of Digital was talking to me on Twitter the other day, and he was saying, everyone's obsessed with speed, which is true. Like this is AI makes you much faster, but it also has an impact on quality, right? Because you're able to do better thinking because it's giving you ideas and you're iterating with it.
Yeah, and that's where it's pretty interesting because, like I said, like this would be something that I would need to train people to figure out the Ethereum way and then the Eric way of asks like this. These LLMs are trained on me. Like I'm telling them, like, no, this is what I want. This is what I want. So the output is getting not only faster but higher quality. So just like kind of all things investment is number one. Number two, this is unique to me, but maybe some folks in like BD and sales and CEOs might get something out of this. I find myself using it to kind of leverage the portfolio and the ecosystem. What I mean by that is I'm asked for a few things all day long. I'm asked for money. I'm asked for jobs, and I'm asked for like intros or ideas on like people that, can do a specific thing. One thing that I've done, because, like at some point, the ecosystem and the portfolio, it just gets too big. And I used to have the answers in my head all the time, but it's reached a point of scale that I no longer have these answers. So I have uploaded my personal LinkedIn network to Claude. Anybody can do this, by the way. Go to LinkedIn, download your contacts. It's basically called downloading your contacts and then uploading it to your LLM of choice. I then ask Claude all day long for ideas that if it doesn't come to mind or if it does come to mind for a person or a company that does a specific thing, help find this thing for me. And like I will all the time identify ideas and companies that I didn't have at the top of my head. So it's like warm intros for a portfolio company that's looking to break into CPG. How many people do I know in CPG? It is a heck of a lot, right? So it's like, coming up with ideas to help people break into certain categories and companies, connect the dots across all of our portfolio companies, right? So conversely, I'm asked for, hey, companies that do this, whether it's inside or outside of the portfolio. And then I will then also use this as a basis for drafting like strategic plans and memos for external use around companies and people, if that makes sense, right? So like it's like taking like the network and turning it into something that's like way more actionable. And again, I can do these things faster, and undoubtedly like the head is like too full of ideas and work anyway. So it's like if I don't have an answer for you, I generally can kind of like use this to spit out an answer.
Yeah, I think one of the types of thinking that AI really excels at, and that it's so much better than humans at, is it can, of course, process a vast amount of data, right? And so, like what you're saying, where it's like you have 80 portfolio companies and you just can't possibly keep all of them straight or immediately summon, here are the 7 to whom this query would be most relevant. AI is extremely good at that kind of thinking, right? So I'll touch on the same thing with creative for my clients, where it's like, if you have 20 different clients and they're all doing a bunch of different stuff, like teasing out specific details that are relevant to a specific problem or query is something that AI excels at.
Absolutely, yeah. And then the third thing, again, these are just 3, but these are the 3 that kind of came to mind. It's like communication assistant and then like execution assistant. So I have to write a lot, whether that's like, investor updates, other materials we might use in market, stuff that I write on behalf of companies, negotiations with other parties. Like a lot of this stuff is just, I write a bunch. I don't use like LLM outputs to do my writing for me, but it's like pressure testing a lot of this stuff or improving them or asking like, hey, how can this be better? I find that to be like extremely helpful. And this is where Claude is doing this more for me than formerly ChatGPT would. ChatGPT is like awesome for just like, hey, write this thing in my voice or rewrite this thing in my voice. I tend to upload things to Claude these days and say, hey, point out where I'm getting this wrong, where I can improve it. And it doesn't do the rewriting for me. It will give me suggestions. And then again, the other thing is like, I'm trying to just like, move faster. So when I'm able to get materials created faster, I can move from like meeting to deliverable that much faster, right? So it's like it augments my work, it augments my judgment, and then just like compresses the time.
Yeah, maybe that's a good segue into my three things, my three buckets, because my first, of course, given my métier is going to be creative, right? So mostly writing. So I see a lot of people out there using AI still very poorly for creative. And what I mean by that is
copy paste. Don't do that.
And almost, dude, it's like, it's tons of people I respect. And I'm like, guys, we got to put like a little more effort in this. So I think the mistake that a lot of people make with creative when it comes to AI is, they're just going to it and they're like, write something on this, like, for example, anyone in our industry, TDD reported earnings this week. You could have gone to AI and you could have been like, write an analysis of TDD's earnings, right? And you would get something that would be fine. But my POV is you should be using AI for virtually everything you write. It can expedite and improve the process, but it has to be collaborative. Like you said, it's a co-pilot. And so the way I use it as someone who's, writing tons and tons of stuff is first, I'm going to train it. It's basically three things. It's training, prompting, and editing, right? So on the training, like for all of my clients, I have an ongoing chat going with ChatGPT, which is my, LLM, my default LLM. And so it's trained on sort of how I view the client, how the client views themselves. I feed it my main strategy doc that I create for every client. So it knows like the main narrative we're trying to land in the market, past blog posts they've written. So it knows like the CEO's voice, all that stuff. So it has that background to begin with. And then I'm going to prompt it. So like if I want to write a LinkedIn post for a CEO or I want to write like an article for them, I'm going to give it the outline. So I'm going to say, if it's a LinkedIn post, I'm going to say, here's the hook, because that's the most important thing of all, right? Here's like the first line. And then I'll give it sort of the meat of the post. Like, this is generally how I think the argument's going to go, yada, yada, but it's not polished, right? Doesn't have like writerly polish. And then I'll just say like, polish this or expand this in XYZ ways, like polish this post, keeping my language, but add in XYZ, right? Add in the client's usual take on this or that. And then it's going to give me the output. So then after training and prompting, then comes editing. And the most important thing with editing is you make sure it's true to your POV, or in this case, the client's POV. And then you also eliminate what I call bot voice, right? So we all know what that is. It's the dashes. It's the not just this, but also that or whatever. It's the like staccato rhythm of ChatGPT where it loves like lists and periods. So basically you have to do those three things as train, prompt, and edit. And if you do that, AI should make you vastly faster because like, look, part of my being decent at what I do is like, I'm a very fast writer and could like write a byline, like a 800 word essay. I could do that in like an hour, right? But with AI, if it's already trained, I can do that in like 20 minutes, right? And then maybe, other people on my team help, but it's like, it should make it both better in the sense that it's able to do what you were saying about the portfolio and like bring in so much detail about the client and reference past examples they've used and all of that. And then it should make it infinitely faster, right? Things that used to take 5 hours should take under an hour now. So that's how I use it for creative. I'll pause there for a sec.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Super technical question for you. How much are you using Claude?
I don't. I just stick with ChatGPT. I know people love Claude, but I'm like a one AI guy.
And I get it. And I get how spending 100% of time with ChatGPT makes it that much better for you, specifically for the way that you're using it. I would be interested, and probably the audience would be interested in if you started to use Claude maybe for different types of tasks. Because I'm finding that it is really, really good. Like,
I know people love Claude. Claude's like the Brooklyn to ChatGPT's Manhattan. It's like the hipster, and everyone's going there now. But it's exactly for the reason you stated. It's because I don't want a context switch, and ChatGPT already has all of the context. And so I'm like, why would I want to diffuse the context across multiple LLMs? But everyone's saying this about Claude, so I should give it more of a chance. Okay, so that's the number one bucket is creative. The second is CEO type tasks, right? So thinking about the strategy, like if I want to say to if I want to think about my business, and similar to you, right? It's like small firm that I own that I don't have like a co-founder. So of course I have people like you I can talk to about these things. But if it's 11 p.m. on a Tuesday and I'm thinking about the business and where I want to take it this year, ChatGPT is incredibly, or Claude is incredibly helpful at me saying, okay, here's where I am. Here's what I want to go. What do you think my 3 primary objectives should be? Or I'll say, here are my 3 objectives. Where would you challenge this? You know, and of course you can do the classic, you can do a prompt where you're like, think like a business coach, or even think like this particular business coach that you know, whom you respect. And I find it's very helpful at, as you said, pressure testing, formalizing. And then if there is a particular objective where you're like, well, how do I do that? And I need ideas, incredibly good at being like, here's 5 ways you could do that.
Yeah. A lot of commonality with how we're using it.
Yeah.
What's your third?
I'll also just add on the CEO front, I also use it for a lot of people stuff. And I've heard other entrepreneurs say this. It's like really helpful if you have a situation you feel like, because often people stuff, like that's where we can become ego driven, emotional. It's really good at being like, hey, someone on my team like did this. And like, here's my rough response. Can you make this more diplomatic, or can you criticize this or whatever? I heard Sam Parr on My First Million say he's doing that. And I find that very helpful. So just think about the olden times where like you'd be emotional about a business thing and you would spend 2 hours like looking at something and being like, I know I'm being a dick, but how do I fix it? And now like the LLM can fix it immediately. And then the third area would be biz dev. So marketing, sales, for example, Marketecture Live. Well, as we're recording this, when you guys hear this, it'll be the following week. So I go to my Beehive newsletter list, which is like 1,500 subscribers. And I say, pull the 200 people, active subscribers to this list who would be the best fit for me to have a meeting with at Marketecture. And I give it some criteria. It does a very good job. In 1 second, you get a list of 200 people. And I went through it and I only pruned like 25 of the 200 names. Like, think about that. Like how long it would take you to go through it one by one. And then it just does it in like 5 minutes and like gets it 87% right.
Yeah. I just can't. If I just think about the olden times, pre like ChatGPT and Claude, it's incredible. So it's truly given superpowers. One comment to you on the people front. I've used some of this at times to like offload angst. So if it's just like, hey, like I gotta like, let somebody down, say no, just like push back on something. I find that, just like saying to an LLM, hey, I got to do this, like, help me think through the right way to do this. It then, kind of comes back with its idea on it, or ask me for some clarification. And it's like, I just find that not being in my own head and just like obsessing over how to like do this thing versus just like, hey, like, I don't want the stress. Like, hey, you got the problem now. You help me with the solution. I found has been a real unlock for me. Taking it from inside the head.
And again, criticize and improve your thinking, right? So maybe you're thinking about, or justify, right? It could do either, right? So, and you can explicitly tell it to do that. You can say, give me the yes case, give me the no case. So yeah, I think that's helpful. And I also think, like I was joking about the Tuesday at 11 p.m., any CEO, manager, whatever, you're having these thoughts after work hours. And that's one of the most challenging things, because historically, it'd be like, even if you have someone in your org you could touch base with on this stuff, you might not be giving them that call at 11 p.m. And so just having an always on, thought partner, I think is super helpful.
So like, we're not coders, right? We're not software engineers. I think both of us look at some of the things that people are doing that are, more technical with like great envy. Like, they're just like, they got agents that are just like doing jobs and they're using it in such an advanced way. Is there something that like you want to do with AI that you just haven't gotten to yet, or like a thing that you're like really interested in doing? Like I have mine, but I'm curious if you've got, just like your kind of like bucket list or wish list of AI capabilities.
I have been thinking about this, in fact, thinking about that exact question and like, should I be spinning up like semi-autonomous agents and what would they be doing? That's what led to this episode. Is I was thinking about that because I hear, all these entrepreneurs talking about spinning up agents. And I'm like, look, I don't really use AI in an agentic way at present, in the sense that it's like I'm prompting and I'm iterating with it, right? But I don't have like autonomous agents where it's like I go to bed and then they're doing all this stuff. And so I am on the lookout for opportunities in my business where that would become relevant. I do think, like, look, the most obvious one is, could you have an entry-level writer that is an agent, right? Where it's like the thing I'm describing doing, where it's like, I'm going to ChatGPT and I'm saying, here's the training, here's the prompt, whatever. And I think the obstacle to that, and someone's probably already solved this, I don't think it's standard practice yet, is you would need that person, that would need to be an AI that's like in the meeting, right? Which obviously there are AI note takers. It would need to be like in the meeting, and then it would need to be able to have the intuition itself to be like, well, we discussed this in a meeting and I should probably do like a blog post about it. And then it goes off and does that. That probably is the future. And you would still, again, want that senior person, like just like I do for my junior writers. Like I'll be in a meeting and I'll be like, here's what we should do. And I'll basically think it through in real time. And then the writer goes and executes, right? You could have AI doing that. So that's probably the application. What's on your list?
That's cool. For me, so we've been doing this being the firm, the investing for 8 years now. We've invested in like 80 odd companies. We have a corpus of information, so much information on every company we've looked at, every company we've invested in, the trajectory of that company. We have everything, right? So like I would like to at some point like lock myself in a proverbial room and build an AI that has the entire corpus of every decision that we've made and the reasons for all of those decisions, and be able to start to use that to scenario plan and ultimately see if I can come up with like patterns of how to make better decisions, you know? And so much of this is just like, you can't rely on these types of things because there's so much like kind of like luck involved in like startups and investing. And the future is never unlike the past. But if I can, to even a small degree, just like come up with some sort of insights to help make me make better decisions, the impact that I can have from a returns perspective could be incredible, right? So it's like, we've talked about TV Scientific sometime, like everybody knows, really, really great outcome for the company and for us as a firm. What can I do if I just like figure out the decision I made back then, the thinking that went to that decision, you know, the company trajectory? Could I identify the next TV Scientific earlier? And can I make a appropriately sized investment earlier? And that could have incredible outcomes.
Yeah.
Or, you know, again, if I just think about it from a returns perspective. So that's a big project, but we're going to do it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a predictive modeling type thing. It also makes me wonder, like, there's been a lot of discourse about, oh, well, you should spin up these agents and whatever. But I think there will also be a lot of people like us, non-technical people who are nevertheless invested in this stuff, who say, like, the new project, like in the olden days, you would have a coder, like you'd have a programmer, and they'd sort of be on continuously. Maybe the future is like, you know, you have an extremely high leverage project where I have, you know, an engineer buddy come to Sharpen and be like, this writer I described on this podcast with Eric, can you create that? And then they sort of tweak it and get it up and running. And then that delivers like a tremendous amount of value. Like that sort of, and this is a big space, I think, this like sort of AI consulting space is like going to be huge.
Absolutely. If it can get to the point where I can, these buzzwords now that are becoming real, if I can, you know, have these high leverage opportunities to exercise my judgment, my taste, right? All these like kind of AI EQ things, I think undoubtedly it's gonna make people better and more performant. It's a fun time. But it's also not a fun time if you were on X and the internet yesterday, Thursday, February 26th, and you saw this bomb that Jack Dorsey dropped about his company Block. Why don't you take everybody through what happened, Joe?
Yeah, so Block laid off 4,000 of its 10,000 employees and very unequivocally cited AI as the reason. Jack put out an X post that went super viral, and you know, a lot of other firms have made these cuts, but they usually make them in smaller iterations. And they also usually are not upfront about AI being the reason, or maybe they allude to it. But in this case, it was very directly, we are cutting off 40% of our staff. This is like a $30 billion public company. Stock popped like 20% on the news. And they just said, we need to come up with new ways of working. And we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off and figure it out. So, Eric, I'm curious for your reaction to this news, the sort of, you know, we can get even into like the sort of socio-political consequences a little bit, but more directly from like a corporate management standpoint, like, what do you think of doing it this way? How do you actually inspire people to adapt to the moment, et cetera?
It was wild. I happened to be, scrolling X when he made the post, and I was shook. And subsequently, a lot of people piled on with thoughts. So I have my own thoughts here. We can go through them. So this is what he said, and we saw the result. So other side of this, some questions I'll ask you. So it's like, this was Block. This wasn't Amazon. This wasn't Microsoft. This wasn't Meta. This wasn't Tesla. This wasn't NVIDIA, right? So I think it's understandably, it's 10,000 employees, public company, visible CEO, lots of jobs. I think how much weight do we put on Block making this decision versus a S&P 10 company, S&P 50 company making the decision? Although, by the way, this is an S&P 500 company, right? So I think that's kind of thought one. And you don't need to react to all of this stuff. I'll put this out there just as the other side of it. Number two, is this a Jack Dorsey issue? Elon Musk famously walked into X after he closed the purchase and, had the kitchen sink. I forget exactly what the kitchen sink meant at this point, but he very famously reduced the workforce by, I think, 75%. And what's the common thread between Block and X? It's Jack Dorsey, right? So perhaps this is an indicative of maybe mistakes that Jack Dorsey makes in company building and hiring. I don't know. I'm not saying that. I'm asking the question. How much of this is like a bloated company post-COVID that didn't make the reduction that it needed to make prior, and the AI wave giving them a convenient excuse to do so? And then on the other side of it is this was actually according to Jordy from TBPN, this was the largest S&P RIF by a percentage of the workforce in history. So,
oh wow,
this was big, yeah. So anyway, so just some thoughts. Do you want to react to that, and then we can talk about the next level?
I think it's a very big deal because it is a sizable company, as you said. It's still a SPY company, 30 billion market cap. Also, Jack has an disproportionate influence because of the cultural influence of Twitter, now X. So there's that.
Of course.
Look, I think the reality is most corporations are super bloated, right? Like most corporations, and it's because of the culture. Like people in corporations, they say no to a lot of stuff. And they spend a lot of time being like, should we do X or Y? And kind of like thumb twiddling, right? Like that's the reality. And it attracts that kind of talent, right? Because people who are like outraged by that culture of kind of like inertia and sort of deliberate decision making, they go start companies or they go to startups or whatever, right? So I saw this post, and forgive me, I don't remember who it was, but someone said, most corporations could do some version of this. It might not be 40%, but it's like they could do a version of this. But like as a society, we need to think about the ramifications of like every corporation doing this. Like there will become a point where it's like actually like a socio-political problem. And you already see the public, which we're going to get more to with the third item on our list. You see the public being like very anxious about the impact of AI on jobs. And so I think that is like a real problem that, to your point about the difference between like Block and like Amazon, like those companies, like the companies that really are in like Congress's line of sight, they need to think carefully about the like communications ramifications of admitting that AI is going to mean they're going to, have their workforce. So that's something to think about. I'll just hit one more note before I turn it over to you. So there's the like, most corporations could do this, should they? And like the policy and sort of reputational risks. The other thing I'm curious for your brain on is like in theory, it makes sense to me that you could do a big reduction in force with AI. But I see on my own team that it is more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be, right? Because as I was saying earlier, like, yes, AI definitely makes you faster, but it is a co-pilot. It's not just fully replacing people as of yet, right? And that's maybe where we come back to that, like autonomous agent versus human working with AI. Like, as long as the human's working with AI, the human still needs to do a lot of work. And the other thing is, the rank and file are never going to say, yeah, you should fire half of us and like just throw some AI agents on this, you know? And so that's where I think that's part of where it's coming from with Block is they're thinking like the team is never going to be ready for this. And they're never going to tell us now is the time to do it. So we need to just go whole hog and then ask people to figure it out, and they will. But the only way to do it might be to do it in this incredibly aggressive manner.
As a Block employee coming to work today, I'm very curious, and maybe we'll hear from some of them, and maybe we'll hear from some of them on background, through the media. Like, what are you being tasked with, right? Like, all of a sudden, there's 40% less employees, and were you ready for it? Are you receiving direction? Are you receiving support? Like, I just don't know. Jack Dorsey is an incredible. I think he might be more properly called an inventor than an executive, and certainly a founder as well. Like he basically, I think, is credited for inventing X. He invented Square, which was the foundation of Block. He is more successful and better than me in every way from a corporate standpoint. So I'm not criticizing him at all. It's just this is big. It's a biggie. And the thing that again, sort of like societally I get concerned about was what you said earlier, which is he made this announcement and the stock popped 15% in, like immediately, or 20% or something like that. The CEOs are measured by investors in one way, their impact on the stock. So if we see that making an aggressive cut, saying it's because of AI, and then having this direct result happen, I mean, every CEO has to be thinking about this. Like, this is literally incentivizing CEOs to make this decision. So I get concerned about this happening quickly without companies being prepared, without people being prepared. And again, it's probably a weird thing for a VC to say. I know, like, a lot of my counterparts might take the other side of this, and I understand why, but like, whoa.
Yeah. When I read Jack's statement, I immediately felt like this is very geared toward shareholders, right? Like there was specifically a paragraph in like this 5-6 paragraph statement. It was like 3, I think, where he says, we're not doing this because our business is weak, right? Our business is strong. We're growing. We're very profitable, all that kind of stuff. And so he was clearly signaling to the street, we're strong and we're just going to be even stronger. And we're going to be a leader on like modernizing our operations to fit this new, more profitable technology first era. But I do think that's probably a sensible way to do it, right? And there's like classic wisdom. Right, exactly. There's the classic wisdom of all at once instead of a million paper cuts. And I do agree with that.
Having lived it in previous lives, trust me.
Yeah, it's better that way. So it makes a lot of sense to me to do it the way they did it in the end. But look, I think it's just Block can get away with it. I don't know if like Amazon and Google, to your point, can get away with it. Like, I mean, they'll get away with it in the sense of like they can do it, but companies of that size need to think more about like society, right? And like tipping the scales so much that regulators are like, holy shit, we need to put a stop to this, which there's already a lot of enthusiasm for on both sides of the aisle, is like essentially just trying to freeze AI. Like you see Bernie Sanders being like, no more data centers. The biggest companies need to think seriously about that kind of sentiment and whether they're stoking it.
And they are. I'm sure they are. But I also think that this may be something that we'll look back on as, opening up the floodgates. Crazy time.
Yeah. So let's end on this note. Apropos of public sentiment, a pop cultural reference for all of you. Many of our listeners are probably watching The Pitt, which is a hit medical drama on HBO. It just won like all of the awards for last year in TV, starring Noah Wiley, who's involved in ER. I don't know about that. That was from a time before me, but that happened. Anyway, AI is a big plot point this season. And basically, it's like a new attending comes in to replace Dr. Robbie, the head of the ER, and the emergency department. And she's like, we're going to use this generative AI app to like do all our note taking and stuff. And it's very much in there as this like sort of antagonistic flashpoint where, of course, all the doctors are like, we don't like this for XYZ reasons. And it's very clear that like the assumed position on the part of the audience is like, yeah, F these AI people like coming in to like change the way we work and replace our doctors. And so I think it's always interesting to look to cultural representations to understand sort of where the culture is on a topic, especially beyond our like tech bubble where people are very optimistic. And so one of the concerns is, this is going to replace us. They're going to ask us to do more with less, right? That's related to what we were just talking about. It's like the rank and file, 90% of the rank and file never going to advocate for this because they're just going to view it as this is more work for me. But then the other thing, and this is where I'm like particularly unsympathetic to the popular critiques of AI, is in the show, they use AI to write notes on their cases in the ER. And it's like, they're like, yeah, it can write the case, the notes in under a minute, but it like made a couple mistakes and like someone didn't proofread it. And they're like, well, that's because she used the AI. And I'm like, no, it's not the AI's fault. It's because she used the AI to do the job in 10% of the time and didn't spend an extra minute to proofread it to make sure that it didn't hallucinate anything. So I just find, again, outside of our tech bubble, like this is just like a very common critique I hear from like friends outside the industry of AI is they're like, well, it hallucinates and it's like imperfect. And I'm like, yeah, it's an incredibly useful technology that helps you move 10 times as fast. And it also makes some mistakes that you have to proofread. Stop whining.
Yeah, that's so funny. There was that article that went around a couple of weeks ago. Again, it's end of Feb 2026, where somebody pointed to the massive disconnect between, I think, normies and early adopters, and specifically in this moment where everybody has tried ChatGPT, and if you tried an early version of ChatGPT and it was weird and hallucinated and gave you like, kind of like strange outputs back in, I don't know, early 25, you really should do yourself a favor and look at it in February of 26, because these things have improved to a degree that you need to experience it to really understand, right? So I think there's that little bit of disconnect in terms of the moment. This reminds me of other massive shifts that I've seen over the course of my longer career and lifespan, where it's just like, things start to hit a cultural understanding and, there's like a very predictable reaction, alarm, humor, becomes part of the zeitgeist. We're seeing it here. Ultimately, I saw a chart the other day where it's just like, so searches on LLMs are growing. They're growing at an incredible rate. Searches by self-identified early adopters are off the charts. So it sort of underscores the disconnect, but then also we've seen this in every single technology shift where it's led by early adopters and then everybody's using it, from mobile, smartphones specifically, to social networks, to the internet itself. Like, we're just at the beginning of this shift, and we'll look back and laugh at this, like that video of, I think, like Katie Couric and Brian Gumbel making fun of email. Like, when email was like literally just introduced in like 94. I think we're just at that moment.
Yeah. The classic Paul Krugman column where he was like, the internet, I forget what his exact take was, but he was basically like, the internet will be very small and not that big a deal. That is how I feel when I talk to friends and they're like, this is complete bullshit, like there's no value to this. I'm just like, yeah, that is crazy. Like, you can have particular critiques of it, but the idea that it doesn't provide a tremendous amount of value is insane.
Yeah. I just, let's end it on a positive note, which is with all of these shifts, every single shift, we did not know all of the positives and the value and the change that was ahead of us at the time. Nobody could have predicted, like the impact that the internet would have, that smartphones would have, that app ecosystem would have, social, like everything like that. AI is bigger in some ways than all of this stuff. So, we're just at this like weird place of both, kind of like it becoming mainstream, things that we see like with Block, like there's something, ahead of us that I think is going to, be like a real patch. But I'm fully confident on the other side of it, it's going to be like really, really positive. And there's going to be like new jobs, capabilities, benefits for all. But we're in the middle, or we're entering the middle, perhaps.
Yep. Good note to end on.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Eric.